Welcome, and thank you for joining today's AgileLIVE webinar, Measuring the Success of Your Agile Transformation, Part 2. I'm Andy Powell, Product Evangelist for VersionOne, and I'm excited to be moderating today's AgileLIVE webinar. These thought leadership webinars are focused on helping organizations scale Agile faster, easier, and smarter. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few logistics. The presentation will last approximately 40 minutes, followed by a Q&A session. For those of you who haven't used On24 before, I would like to point out a few areas in the audience console. All participants are muted throughout the presentation, so if you have questions, please send them through the Q&A panel on your console. At the end of the presentation, we will answer as many questions as we have time for. If we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you after today's webinar. If you have any technical questions, please send a note through the Q&A panel and an On24 representative will be happy to assist you. I'd like to encourage everyone to share your aha moments with others during the event using the Twitter panel. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending a link or sending an email next week with a link to the recording and the slides. And finally, you can earn 1 PDU credit for attending today's webinar. So if that's your thing, then the information is provided here on the slide. Now I would like to introduce our featured presenter, Jerry Odenwalder. Jerry is a product manager at VersionOne. I've had the pleasure of working with him for almost 7 years. He's been building software for more than 20 years and claims to love it more today than when he started. He's been part of both successful and failed projects in various industries and has lived to write and present on various topics in the Agile software development space. Jerry, thanks for joining today, and I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Super. Thank you, Andy, and welcome everyone. I'd like to start today with a quick review of what we heard in last week's AgileLIVE presentation presented by Brad Swanson with Agile 42. First, Brad demonstrated the importance of starting with why. He also showed a framework for organizational transition and gave an example of how to use the framework in practice. One of the key points of this was the pilots, to pilot ideas and then roll them out. He also discussed leading and lagging indicators for the success factors. Your PSF are your potential success factors. Those are the things you have going into the pilots. And as they are validated during the pilot, they become critical success factors. And he concluded with a discussion of metrics at different levels, along with some questions you should ask when selecting the metrics and the importance of balancing metrics. As we know, organizational transformation is complicated at best, but more than likely it's complex or worse, chaotic. Managing and measuring in these environments is difficult because the cause and effect are not directly related, and change often has unexpected side effects in other parts of the organization. So if you had to improve this process, where do you begin? Well, we can create small safe-to-fail experiments. Brad referred to them as pilots, and these experiments are measurable. And from the pilots, we keep the things that work, and we learn from the things that fail. It's important as we pilot and roll out changes that we measure continuously. Inherent to all Agile methodologies is the concept of short continuous delivery cycles. These smaller cycles not only make it easy to refine and deliver software, they also increase the frequency at which you have the visibility necessary to understand and respond to change. One final reminder about the value of working iteratively is the statement that I've heard Mary Poppendick say on many occasions. If it's hard, do it more often and you'll get good at it. I can tell you I've seen a lot of truth in this throughout my career, and it is very beneficial. Agile methodologies bring with them several new metrics and reports dependent on your chosen methodology. Most of these metrics are well documented, but it's important to understand how to use them in order to be successful. Agile ALM tools like VersionOne simplify the process of collecting the data necessary for visibility and understanding. Agile transformations will eventually impact multiple levels in your organization. Therefore, I will use this diagram from the Scaled Agile framework to set the context for the remainder of our discussion. I have chosen this image because it clearly identifies multiple levels in the organization, and it clearly identifies the assets used to plan, track, and measure at these levels. This will not be a safe presentation. I realize there are other approaches and frameworks for scaling Agile initiatives. I'm only using this image as a reference to set the context for our discussions. Finally, you'll be measuring at every level in your organization, regardless of your pilots, in order to safeguard against unanticipated impacts. So let's start off with a quick survey. Which level of measuring Agile transformation is most important for you right now? And we'll give you a few minutes to record your result.
And if everyone just wants to go ahead and submit your result there, we'll publish the poll results in a second. And that'll give you some insight into how your measurement compares to others attending the webinar today. All right, Jerry. So I published the results there so people could see kind of what came back, and there we go.
All right, super. So it looks like the majority of us are here for team level, and then some program and some portfolio. So we're going to cover all three. So starting with teams, since they are the foundation of Agile, let's begin. Here's a familiar diagram that has been used to illustrate an iterative process such as Scrum or XP at the team level. And in a few moments, we will be discussing various ways to measure success at different points in this process. VersionOne also supports continuous processes such as Kanban, and we'll discuss measurements in those environments as well. So I'm going to switch over to the VersionOne product now. And you should be seeing my screen. There we go. And we're at the home page in VersionOne. And just for those who are on the webinar who are not as familiar with the product, across the top is our main menu. And it's kind of a line from left to right for the various points in an Agile process. And as I select one, that part of the tool will highlight. And so that's how you can kind of judge where we are in the product. And there's submenus in here. The other thing I'd like to point out in VersionOne is that our structure is hierarchical. And so all of our reports and data entry and everything is driven off of this context. And so you'll see me come in here a couple of times and switch context as we go through the demonstration today. I'm going to begin in iteration planning. And in iteration planning, the key metric that we want to look at here is going to be your team's velocity. How much work have they completed historically in the past? We can see here that this chart, this velocity trend chart, allows us to see how much work. We can hover over these and identify how much work has been completed historically. And we can see that there's an average line here. And so as we're planning moving forward, we want to make sure that we plan appropriately. If the teams have been consistently delivering 25 points worth of work, there's no need in planning 50 in the next iteration unless there's some change coming up that your team feels like it can complete 50 points worth of work. The other thing that's important in here is that for success, you want your teams to remain focused. And one of the things this report shows you, the dark gray lines here are the velocity for the teams in the currently selected project. So in this case, it's Release 1.0. These red bars indicate where where teams have been working outside of this context. And so switching the context has been shown to slow down the process. You're not always able to get as much done if there's a lot of context switching. So if your teams can remain focused on a project, then you'll see a greater chance of success. Also, VersionOne allows multiple teams to work out of the same backlog. So if you're doing planning for multiple teams, you can use this team filter here to narrow down the results to a given team. During the iteration, as your teams are iterating, you're going to want to keep an eye on metrics such as the burn down and the cumulative flow, how work is flowing through the process. This can be done on our stand-up dashboard. It's quickly visible every day as your team is going around updating each other on the progress of things. They can have a look at the team burn down, and this is the amount of to-do that has been completed over time. And if this line starts to go flat, then it's an indicator that teams are not updating their to-do values. And they've got that daily reminder to go and take care of that. It's, from my experience as a developer, I can tell you it's one of those things that we don't enjoy doing every day. But with the reminder here, it's like, oh, it's flat. I need to go update. The other thing that all of our reports have on them is this gray line, light gray line that we refer to as the ideal line. It's a linear burn down of the total amount of work planned. And you can see quickly if you're ahead or behind schedule. So we should be, in order to deliver on time, should be decrementing to do by a certain amount every day. Most work is not typically linear, but it'll ebb and flow as time goes on, and you can tell if you're ahead or behind based on the difference. Here on the right is the cumulative flow, and this chart shows work flowing through the process. So each color represents a status value that we see here at the bottom. And if you get over halfway through your iteration and it's still blue, it's a reminder to ask the question, why are things not moving across the board? What's holding us up? As you get to the end of an iteration, actually let's stay in the iteration for just a moment. In the iteration, in the reports page in our product, there are over 60 reports back here, and they're grouped by their targeted function, everything from executive reports to testing reports. We've got an iteration dashboard. And the iteration dashboard is another place to go and look at metrics that are important during an iteration. So each of these, you can click the View button to see larger versions and to copy them off if you want to put them in a presentation. Each of these metrics, so we've already talked about burn down. The total detail estimate trend, the green line represents the amount of detail estimate, the amount of hours that the team has indicated it would take to complete the task and test necessary to complete the story. And then we can see a done line here. If you're tracking effort, you'll get the done line as it comes up towards the detail estimate. So you can go back and you can look at old iterations to kind of get an idea of how well your teams did for estimating. This is a great place. I'm not going to come back here, but this is a great place at the end of iterations for teams that are trying to improve their estimating skills. Come back in here and look and see, hey, we estimated it to be this. How accurate were we? And then work on where there was a difference and then improving that skill. Total estimate trend here at the bottom allows us to see the total amount of stories and defects that we have in the sprint. And you can see here that the red bar indicates the open estimate. So this is the estimate that's in there. The green bar indicates closed estimate. And one of the things we want to look for is that when the bar jumps up like it has here on the third bar, it indicates that work has been added or estimates were changed during a sprint. There might be legitimate reasons for bringing work into a sprint. But if you can keep the work, the team's committed at the beginning, after sprint planning, if they stay focused on what they committed to deliver in that sprint, you'll have increased chances of success. Again, it's remaining focused. But life happens, and occasionally you have to pull in work, and so this is how you can see when that kind of change happens. Finally, we see our test counts by status here. Again, going through the sprint, we see that we started off with a certain number of tests available to us that were not passing, and as we've progressed, we've added some tests, and we can see the pass and fail changing throughout the iteration. At the bottom, we can see member loads, and these two charts are here to complement each other. If you have folks that are, again, committed to delivering work in the sprint, and you don't see, so the total bar height represents the total to do. The green is coming in to show what work has been done. And if you see that this is not happening, the bottom chart is there to complement the top chart. So the top chart shows us what's going on in this sprint. The bottom chart shows us across the entire system. Again, if you have folks that are working across multiple projects, you may notice that, like, for instance, this top bar is not nearly, or let's do the third one over, is not nearly as high as the rest of them for done. But if you look down, you can see, oh, this individual is working on more than one thing. Is there any way we can rearrange work, maybe pull someone in to help in a given area in order to meet the commitments? Okay, so we go through our sprint, and we get to the end of the sprint, and now we need to reassess where we stand on the entire project. And so if we look at our project and program dashboard, now we're looking at things on the overall project. So we've committed to delivering this work, let's say in a quarter, in some larger time period than 2 weeks. Although we have a lot of teams that release after every iteration. So, but if we don't, if we're going to release every quarter, for instance, here's where we look at that larger picture. We can see our burn down for stories and defects in the project. So here's the remaining estimate. Again, we want to see this line going down. The ideal line also here to kind of help you judge where you are in terms of linear progression. Our estimate trend for the entire project. Again, just like with the estimate trend for the sprint, we want to see the bar kind of remaining steady. If you've committed to a certain number of points I'm going to continue to go with the quarter unit. But if you've committed to a certain number of points in that time frame, life happens. Work needs to be pulled in. Sometimes you're not able to estimate everything up front. Sometimes you overestimate up front, and as you get deeper in, you realize you can remove some things. So if this bar here starts to go up or down, it indicates that estimates are being added or taken out. And again, we can see the closed estimate here overtaking the total bar height. We have a look at velocity here to see, again, how have we been trending over time. And test counts, another place that you kind of hopefully want to see this number going up as you're building product. You want to see an increase in their testing. Down at the bottom of this, there's several graphs that have specific information on them. And all of these graphs, several tables that have specific information on them. And all of these are configurable. And I've configured this top one to show some metrics that are available in these charts. Things like, so we're looking at the release here for the overall release. We can see the begin and end dates. We can put things on here like the total open stories and the total open defects. So this is just a count of stories and defects that are open. We can see the remaining estimate. We can get an idea of unestimated stories. The unestimated stories represent risk. If you've got 116 points of open estimate and there are still 50 unestimated stories, there's some risk there that there's some stuff hiding in there that has not been accounted for in the release. unestimated defects, blocking issues, and we can see here a quick progress bar of how we're doing. The total bar length representing the total time, the little white arrow representing where we are today, and the blue indicating closed. So from just looking at the bar, quick glance, we can see we're ahead of schedule. Another thing that you might want to look at the end of a sprint, especially if you're not releasing at the end of every sprint, is the release forecast. And here we can kind of get an idea of each solid bar represents real work in the system. The shaded bars represent calculations, and we can kind of get an idea of how many more sprints we need to go to complete, or how many more periods. So we've said these are 2-week periods, so each bar represents 2 weeks. We've got a scheduled completion date here that we can see, and a forecast completion date. You can do some what-if scenarios in here. So if you're behind schedule and you need to, how can we get caught up? There's lots of what-ifs here. What if we only did defects? What if we only worked on items that we've already started, so forth. You can also play what if with your velocity, so the amount of work that a team can complete in an iteration. You can, for example, say, well, what if we just do the best case or the worst case? Just to kind of get some ideas of what could happen moving forward. Finally, for Kanban teams, so let's go and take a look at Kanban metrics in the core product. So I'm going to start, I have changed my project to the maintenance project, and we'll go back to iteration tracking. VersionOne support for Kanban includes identifying work in progress limits. So we can see here that the team has established a work in progress limit, a WIP limit of 3 for ready and 2 for developing. But they've said overall between ready and developing, they only want 4 items in play. You'll notice that there's a slight shade to the background here, indicating that your work in progress limit has been violated. VersionOne will not prevent you. I can move more stuff in here into work in progress. We're not going to prevent you from doing it, but we do highlight the fact that your work in progress limits have been compromised. Another thing that we can look at here is work item cycle time, the amount of time it takes for work to flow through the process. So at the bottom of this diagram, we've indicated that we want the cycle time from analysis to done, and up at the top, it's for the last 2 months. And so the tool will then break down the cycle times by the estimate. I have some friends that are that do Kanban development as their chosen methodology, and they always argue with me about putting estimates on things. But I do think it has value, especially for teams who are just now getting started, and having it help you improve your estimating and just getting an idea of how different, the complexity of different stories that move through, how long it takes. If you start to see these lines form a straight line, indicating that it doesn't matter what the estimate is, it always flows through in about the same amount of time, then you may be able to start removing estimates. So there cycle time, and finally, there is a cumulative flow on work items. So we can look at work items flowing through the entire process here. There's some filters on here. If you would like to filter this to particular teams, to particular work items, you can change the duration, start dates, and so forth. So you may want to look at smaller time boxes. Instead of looking at how long has it been since the beginning of time, you may want to look at how are we doing in the last month, in the last 6 months, to kind of get an idea of things improving over time. And the final thing I'd like to point out before going into analytics, for teams that want to just I don't want all the clutter of the rest of the product. I want to just focus on doing my job on a daily basis. VersionOne has team rooms, and inside of here there are several of these key metrics to help you, such as your average velocity, what you have currently planned, and the sprint burn down in this case. For VersionOne Ultimate customers, we have an analytics product. Analytics is kind of divided into 3 major functional areas: dashboards, analytic grids, and custom reporting. The dashboards contain a lot of the same charts and panels that we have in VersionOne, but we do have some new ones. So in this webinar, what I'm going to focus on are those things that are different. A couple of just logistical things about this. Dashboards can be configured. I'm not going to go through and change the configuration of them through the webinar. Additionally, you can configure these individual panels. Also, the panels can be clicked to get larger versions of them. So this first one that we're looking at is what we call Agile Earned Value. The purple line here at the top represents the target estimate for the release. So for this whole release, we've said we want to deliver 200 points in estimate. The orange line represents actual. So we can see how our backlog has actually been estimated compared to our target. The blue line represents closed work, burning up. So as we close work, we are working towards delivering to the target. There is a yellow line that also indicates velocity, and the gray line again is an ideal line. So you can kind of see how your team is progressing. Actually, I'm going to open this up large again just to show you 2 important configuration parameters. The first is the target estimate that you can set. The second one is the iteration count. So we calculate defaults based on start and end dates, but if 6 isn't really the right number, maybe we need to go 7, the x-axis will account for iterations that are unplanned. The next panel to the right is velocity trend, planned versus actual. In the core product, you saw where you could see the velocity trend. This one actually looks at the beginning of the iteration, how much did we plan, and at the end, how much did we deliver. The sample data team is doing really good. They always deliver exactly what they planned, and we can see future iterations planned out there. The work item cycle time in analytics is slightly different in that it indicates the maximum and minimums along with the average. So we can then get a range. If things with an estimate of 2 may take as much as 50 days, they may take as little as 35, but on average they take 22. To the right of the cycle time is story count by iteration. Here what we're looking at is how many stories do we plan in a particular sprint or iteration? How many did we add in the middle of that? So if there's any added, there'll be a yellow shaded bar. And what percentage of that work were we able to complete before the end of the iteration? The next row we have work item time and status. On the left, this kind of shows us how long it takes work items to go through a given status. So in this case, we're looking at the in progress. We're looking at closed work items that have been in progress. How long did it take? This is another one that if you click it, you can see the 95th percentile mark. So we know that 95% of our work makes it through this status in 8 days. There's some outliers. You can click on those outliers to open up a separate tab to kind of do some investigative research on what is it about that particular work item that took longer. The next is a time and status histogram. This kind of works in conjunction with the scatter plot to the left of it. We're looking at closed work items in progress. And we can see, okay, from our 95th percentile, we saw 8 days was 95%, but we can look at this diagram and realize that, well, most of the time, it takes 3 days to get through the in progress status. So if your teams are focused on how can we get work delivered faster. These are charts that, again, you can set up the time range that you're looking at them to see over time how your team is doing towards improving their delivery. Finally, there are some pie charts in analytics that allow you to get, as of now, information about work item types, or there's like work items, stories, defects, task, and test, just summary information on these items. You can group these. You can show just opens, just closed. You can group them by various attributes on the asset. Also, while we're over here, I'm going to take a quick look at quality reports. Again, some of the ones here, we also have quality reports in VersionOne. The top two are defect trend. So defects, we're looking at open defects by priority over time. Here we're looking at test trends over time. The second two here are by iteration. So they're the same information that you saw above. We're just looking at them by iteration. A lot of organizations prefer to look at the by iteration thing than the by date, because then they can kind of assess how they're doing after each iteration. And again, at the bottom, some more pie charts around defects. Okay. Let's pause this. And a second here for the slides to come back. Here we go. All right. Now let's take it up a level and talk about measuring at the program level. So at this level, we're going to measure features. And features represent those large groupings of stories and defects, and they're generally created from business initiatives, which we'll talk about in a minute. These features may span several releases, and as we see in the expanded diagram, features are broken down into stories that form a backlog, and those are spread out across multiple releases. So when we're looking at this level, we're asking questions about larger spans of time. So instead of the 2 weeks, like we talked about with sprints, you may be talking about 2 months, for example, at this level. All right, let's jump back over to VersionOne. And I'm going to take us up a level in our planning to the call center. And I'm going to start with our release scheduling page. And I'm showing the release scheduling page because what it allows us to see is a breakdown. So at the top, we see the total backlog for this call center that we have. But at the bottom, what we're looking at are previous releases. And what this allows us to do is, as we're going into a release, just like we used velocity at the team level to look at what we were putting in a sprint, here we can look at what have we been able to deliver in previous releases and use that information when planning the next release. A lot of Agile books and pundits will refer to it as yesterday's weather. The best predictor of what we're going to do today, or the best predictor of today's weather, is what happened yesterday. The best predictor of what we can deliver in today or in this sprint is what we were able to do in last sprint. So again, looking at this at a release level. Another thing we can look at this level is our epic board. Here we are looking at epics or features for this product. We have work in process limits here. So again, we can see that for optimal performance, we don't want more than 3 things in breakdown at the same time and 4 things in progress. Epics themselves have, before I go there, there's an epic cumulative flow diagram. Just like the ones with stories, we're looking at epics flowing through various statuses here. This can be filtered. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And epics have a dashboard panel that allows us to understand the work that it takes to build this, this feature in one place. So looking at just this feature, we can see the amount of backlog that we have committed and that we have completed for this feature. Again, this is another place where if you see this, these bars start to jump up, it's an indicator that more work has been added to this. Down below, again, are two tables that allow us to have some understanding of what we have in terms of epics below this. So you may take your feature and break it down into sub-features in order to deliver it over various releases. This would show all of that breakdown and again, summary information on that. And then the projects where the delivery is having an impact. We'll look at this again in a little more detail in a minute. On the reports page, the project burn down that we talked about earlier, this project burn down can be filtered to an epic. So if we want to look at our order check, well, we may need to increase this or change these dates and periods in order to. It's probably not going to take 7 months. Oops. Let's try 21 days or 21. Let's do weeks. Let's do 7 weeks. Well. It's going to be flat. So anyway, you could change the dates and the periods here, the duration here, to just narrow the scope down to see how you're doing on delivering a given epic. Another report that's valuable at this level is our velocity by date range. At this, when you're looking at things here, your teams may be delivering on different schedules. The velocity by date range allows you to look at that delivery. So in this case, I've got it set, each bar represents every 2 weeks. And then regardless of what the team schedules were, every 2 weeks this will show you how much work was completed. This chart also allows you to do some grouping. So you can look at how much work was completed by priority or how much work was completed by projects. Again, if you're looking at higher levels, you're wanting to know what happened on those sub-projects and those smaller time frames for delivery. Moving over to analytics. I have some panels here. I've put them on the Scrum Master dashboard. So the idea behind the dashboards is to have a view based on a persona into your work. I have chosen to kind of reorganize these for the sake of the demo and put specific panels on specific dashboards just for the context of the discussion. The top two here are defects and tests, again by projects. So by those, like looking historically at how many defects were opened at the end, on the end date of each of these projects. Same with tests, how many were open at the end of, how many tests did we have, how many were passing and failing at the end of a project. The next two down, feature completion allows us to look at, for those features that we have, where do we expect to be as of today? So in this example here for inline reporting, our planned completion date, our planned completion percentage was 55%, but the red line indicates that we're under 15%. We're behind by more than 15%, so we highlight that red. You can see that in these cases, the team actually has delivered some of these features ahead of schedule. Feature velocity allows us to see how many of these features were delivered in previous releases. And so you can go back and look at historical releases to get an idea for how many features have been delivered. Again, looking at what we did yesterday as helping us move forward, helping us improve as we move forward. Story count by project, very similar to features by project, except here we're looking at the stories. We saw one earlier that had the same information by iteration. Now we're looking at them by project. How many did we commit or plan to deliver? How many did we add during that time? And what percentage of that were we able to deliver? The analytics epic cycle time, epic time in status, and epic time in status histogram work the same way as the story one that we observed earlier. Our data samples here is just is small, so we don't see the max and minimum, nor do we see, excuse me, nor do we see a lot of dots here with things being closed. Again, analytics has a lot of the same charts that you have in version 1. These analytic dashboards can also be filtered to epics. So if you wanted to create a dashboard that was for a particular feature, then you can do that here. All right. Oops. Moving on. Now we're going to take a look at the portfolio metrics. A lot of the metrics at this level are the same as we saw at the program level, but there are some new things. And at this level, we are looking at even bigger picture things. So, and at this level, much of the work is going to span different parts of your organization. So you're kind of rolling up the data across a lot of moving parts lower than this level. So here we've updated our diagram to include the business initiatives that are going to get broken down into features that are going to get broken down for the delivery. And we're going to take a look at some metrics at this level. So coming back to version 1, I am now moved back over into product planning. I'm going to change our context to the highest level. And so, now we're looking across the entire organization in this sample data. And we can see delivery of business initiatives over time. So we have some historical business initiatives that have been delivered. We can see what's in play today and what we have moving forward. At the bottom of this chart are a couple of trends that can be valuable. Let's look at them one at a time. Here we can see the amount of estimate that we've been able to deliver on a weekly basis trended over time. So here we can see, 11.38 on average, and we can then look at where are we today, and we're at 10.96. Sometimes you will see dips like this, especially if you are ramping up new teams or making some other organizational change. There'll be a dip in some number because just an effect of making whatever the change, it'll take the teams a little while to get back into the swing of things, especially if you're creating new teams. And so you may look historically, and if you know that you've had an event like this and you see the dip, then you should be looking for an improvement moving forward. Same can be set up for the swag value, the estimate at the epic level. We have a value that we were able to deliver consistently for some period of time, and then we see that we at least anticipate that growing moving forward. If this was real data and you were looking at it, you may want to question the fact that this value is significantly higher and the estimate value is not. That could be because some of these epics haven't been estimated yet. It could be that maybe you're being a little too optimistic. Again, you've got the information here to make to ask the questions. I want to look at the epic dashboard again here at this level because it gives a good illustration of breakdown. Actually, this is not the one I want. This is the one I want to look at. The dashboard here, we can see how this business initiative for delivering this cloud call center product, how it's broken down here, and what projects were targeted here. We can also get a quick glimpse of the progress and unestimated work items and other metrics. Again, this is configurable. But at the bottom, you can kind of get a glimpse of what projects in your organization, what backlogs in your organization have been impacted by this. So we can see that this cloud call center has really, we created a project just for it called call center, but then it's also impacted our corporate website. If there were others, they would be listed here as well. So we can see the global impact of these business initiatives. On the reports page earlier, I showed you the burn downs. I'm going to show you the project summary here. With the project summary, you kind of get a Gantt chart diagram illustrating the progress going on at various levels in your organization. You can create what we refer to as programs, which are just a select number of projects from your entire project backlog. So in this case, this particular program targets your corporate website and your Release 1.0. And then this can be filtered to a particular business initiative. And so then you can get an idea of how this business initiative is, where it has an impact, the projects that it has an impact in, and the progress on them in each of those. So we can see that the Release 1.0 teams are making significant progress in for this call center, whereas the corporate website backlog has not even been started yet. Over in analytics, there's a couple of things. We looked at Agile earned value before. Again, you can filter these dashboards to an epic, so you could look at Agile earned value for a particular business initiative. You can also, in VersionOne, put tests on these business initiatives. So how do we know when our business initiative has been successful? Well, we can test that, and we can create tests on the business initiatives. Then you can track those over time and see the test working towards a passing state. Feature completion is another one to look at this level. How are we doing for these business initiatives based on where we expected to be at this time? Again, cycle time at the epic level for looking at the business initiatives. Another thing that you can create here in our custom reports, custom reports allow you to report on other attributes in your system that may not be available elsewhere, or create reports that maybe we didn't think of a particular report that you like to use in your organization. Those can be created here. I'm going to show this project leadership dashboard just as an example of some things that we've created. Here we're looking at program status. So we can look at things like what's the health of these various initiatives, what is their percent complete, and when are we expected them to be delivered. We can look at things like how we have got our releases allocated in terms of grouping based on some custom field in our project. We can put investment themes on epics. We can even categorize work by these investment themes and then report on where we are. How much of our work is going into innovation, for example, maintenance work, or something else, things that are uncategorized. I've talked to a lot of customers who use custom reports just to make sure their processes are being followed. Don't start work unless it has an estimate. Create a report for work without estimates, and then periodically monitor that to make sure that your process is being followed. It helps ensure that you have good data so that the reports down the road are accurate. A couple of other things in here. We can do things like effort by member. We can look at if you have a very diverse staff, and you can create reports on what their skill sets are. For example, so if you're about to start a huge .NET effort, for example, how many, who has .NET skills? Do we have enough of that? This organization is predominantly Java developers, but we can see that how many of them were needed in each sprint in that particular example. One final thing that I would like to mention about the product when it comes to reporting, all of our grids throughout, every grid in the tool can be exported to Excel, and this can be used for creating reports. And we also have an API that's available with every edition that can be used for extracting data in reports. And a data mart, which is used by analytics for reporting, but you can access that as well to get additional data out. And I know of customers who have integrated our data mart with other tools in their organization for doing reports. Okay. Let's go. So let's start wrapping up here. Here's some other beneficial practices that we've seen in successful Agile transitions. Having a definition of done, knowing what it means when a story's closed, when a defect's closed, when a business initiative or a feature is closed, what does that mean? And having that spelled out. There's nothing worse than getting to the end of a release, everything's closed, and you realize, oh, the end user documentation is not finished, or the production environment needed an upgrade in order for this to happen, and that hasn't happened. So identifying that stuff and documenting it, what does it mean to be done? Team norms are another place that how do the teams work together? Something as simple as what time does stand-up occur, but also what work can be done in pairs and what work can be done solo. I have one for the teams that I work with, and it kind of ties with my definition of done. My definition of done means that the release notes have at least one sentence, even if it's just, Jerry, don't forget to write about XYZ before I close a story. And so one of the team norms that I have for the teams that I work with is nobody closes stories but me, because I want to make sure that I've got that release note piece taken care of. That way I don't get to the end of a release and struggle to remember what we did and what I need to document. Continuous integration. Don't let your teams or your individuals work in isolation for long periods of time. Continuously integrating whatever's being built into whatever is going to be deployed. I've actually seen organizations that are able to automate that to the point of deployment. And so maybe not deployment into production, but deployment so that they know at all times the change that a developer made today was able to deploy without any problems. Automated testing, why manually test everything? This goes all the way from the developer unit tests all the way up to those epic tests. If you can automate something, let the machines do the work for you. They'll do it the same way every time, and you'll have the confidence that everything continues to work. Stop the line culture. If something breaks, if the continuous integration system breaks, or if the automated test breaks, if you have a stop the line culture, then everything will stop until that problem is resolved. And if you take the time to fix those things along the way, it'll save you time down the road. Some reminders as you're measuring things. It's not the data that matters, it's how you use it. Using metrics as carrots or sticks can be a bad thing because measurements will affect people's behavior. If you start rewarding people for finding defects or punishing people for creating defects, you're going to start to get this very narrow view of what a defect is, and you'll create contention in your organization when people are arguing over, no, yes, that is a defect, no, it's not. It really is how you use the data that ultimately matters. Measuring outcomes is important, not the output. Obviously, you want to have a working product that delights your user, but looking at the outcomes of each iteration, each sprint, each feature, it's going to help you improve. And finally, one of the worst things that I've seen anyway is people comparing teams or comparing individuals. Again, it builds strife and animosity. Every group of people is not going to estimate the same way. And so for me to say my team can deliver 10 points a sprint or 1,000 points a sprint, those points may or may not equate to what another team is delivering, even within the same organization. And finally, some caveats, the kind of caveats you always see when looking at metrics. Correlation, not implying causation. Just because two events occurred together does not necessarily mean that one causes the other. You should look at it. Maybe there's a third factor that's causing both of them. The thing that we hear every year when our 401k advisors come in to talk to us, or we talk to our investors, past performance does not guarantee future results. And the last one is one of my all-time favorites, although I think I heard it originally as, if you torture the data long enough, it will confess to anything. The actual quote was, it will confess. All too often, I've seen people read into data or manipulate data to get some answer that they wanted. It's important when you're looking at it to analyze it for what it is, and if it gives you the answer you wanted, then you have an idea of how to respond. And if it doesn't, then maybe a different response is appropriate. So with that, Andy, I realize now as I look at the clock, I've pushed it, and I apologize for that. If we've got time for questions.
Well, yeah, Jerry, we do have just about a minute left before the end of the hour. I want to thank you for the presentation. I think we might have time to ask just one of those that had come in, and if you did have any questions now that we're at the end of the presentation, feel free to submit them. I did also I would like to remind you that the next AgileLIVE webinar series is coming up in August, so stay tuned for that information coming soon. We had a couple people during the course of the presentation that were asking about, hey, I'm using Enterprise Edition, and which of these features are in Enterprise versus the Ultimate Edition. So I just want to point out to everyone that Jerry was looking at the Ultimate Edition today, and some of those capabilities are part that you may not have as part of Enterprise. That's something you can go to the editions page on our website, which gives, I think, a good summary of what's in what edition, but the analytics capability and the Epic dashboards and timelines. Those views are part of Ultimate Edition, which focuses more on the program and portfolio levels. So hopefully that clears up some questions there. And I think the other ones, given the time, we had some great questions come through. We will follow up with you guys and make sure we get you some answers after the presentation. So I'd like to just take a moment to thank everyone for attending today. I hope you found it valuable, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.